the Senior Podcast Show. I'm your host, Kori Lehr. I'm the Director of Communications with the Senior Companies, and I am here today with a couple of wonderful guests. Each of you has been on before. I am super glad that you're back because you are full of wonderful knowledge to share with our audience. I have first, both of you guys are the Senior Network partners, so we're so super happy to have you both on and be a part of our network to provide all of these wonderful resources to our listeners. But I have Michael Marsalese here. He is the managing member of the Marsalese Law Group. Welcome.
Thank you, and thank you for having me again.
I will have you many more times. And then, of course, I have Jonathan Gasso. He is the owner of PARC Home Healthcare. Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you.
Third time's the charm. You can't get enough. We had a really good turnout that each of you separately when you were here before. There's a good amount of crossover in the sort of the services that you offer. You work with the same sort of demographic of clients. And I just thought it would be really interesting to have you both here to sort of see what you see on the outside looking in and have you be able to ask questions of each other. So we talk a lot about different things, home health, estate planning. What do you guys see right now in the current climate of things? What are some trends that you are seeing in each of yours? Michael, would you like to go first?
Yes. So what we see, my practice consists probably 90% of estate planning. And it's my motto that if you do estate planning correctly, you don't have to do certain elder law and the elder law spend down in order to be Medicaid eligible. So what we're seeing a lot of is like family conflicts, end of life decision making. And Jonathan and I'll talk about some of the things that he experiences and how attorneys can come in and help either before or after the fact. And also one of the third topic that we see a lot of are dealing with digital assets. Digital assets are, can be, everyone thinks of cryptocurrency, but for the senior community, it's sometimes your bank accounts are online. When your children are taking care of your finances, you have online bank accounts or Amazon accounts. You also have intellectual property, copyrights are digital assets. But more importantly, data. Your data is a digital asset, and we try to protect those with our various estate planning documents. So I'm going to kind of transfer over to Jonathan, have him give you an intro, and then we'll do a little back and forth on some of the issues that we see cropping up currently.
Love it.
Yeah, so I think some really strong connections do go down along with, the Medicaid spend down. People get interested in that, but oftentimes they're most interested at a more crucial point, at a point where it might be too late, where the timing to get that all taken care of doesn't happen. We do see a lot of that. Advanced directives is a really, really big topic in healthcare. I participate in a lot of town halls with the hospitals. And there are oftentimes advanced directive speakers at these. I did a course to get CEUs in advanced directives a few months ago through Beaumont Hospital. It's a really big push, advanced directives. It seems like everywhere we go, discharge planners are talking about it. Admissions into the hospitals are talking about it. So when I went through some of the courses that I did, oftentimes it involved having an attorney to make sure who the who the POA is going to be. And so that's really a big topic right now.
I wonder if that was a COVID thing, because a lot of the time that those type of issues are really pushed towards like seniors and older people. But I think like with COVID, it was evident a lot of younger people didn't have their ducks in a row, so to speak. And they were in positions where it's like, if, who's it going to be? Who's going to make those decisions for you? So I love that they're trying to, push that to have it be for all and not just.
I can tell you talking or listening to the specialists talk about advanced care planning. There's a lot that goes into it, and there's a reason why. There's a reason why it's more planning than just siblings getting together or spouse and sibling getting together. What's best for the client? What does the client want? What does the potential patient who's in that position want? They get to make that decision before they're in that end of life position. So you really are carrying out their directives, not what mom wants or not what sibling one wants, not what sibling two wants, and putting it in writing.
Well, he said that right from the beginning with family dynamics and how all of those things go. Not everybody agrees on how those wishes should be carried out if they're not put in place prior.
Yeah, and especially if you have, if you're a senior and you have children, and your children have, let's just say, divergent issues, medical positions, and I have a lot of clients that always say, well, I want my oldest child to be my patient advocate. Well, they might not be the best person for a lot of different reasons, like they can't make a decision. Or what about if they want to, if you, the senior, do not want certain medical treatment when you become incapacitated? Well, you have to make sure that the individual you appoint is going to honor your wish, especially if that individual is against what your beliefs are. And so once you're incapacitated, they get to make the choice. So it's really a crucial issue who you pick. And what Jonathan was saying about the advanced directives, most importantly, the discharge planning. Now, we have two different what I call medical directives in our estate planning package. One is your patient advocate, who you name, the party that you want making the decisions. And we always have a second person in case something happens to the first. But secondly, we go through choices that the senior can make while they're still able to make the choices. So we can memorialize what care they want and don't want. So it's in writing. But we have a second document that I call my HIPAA release form. And what it does is on one paragraph talks about how the individual that you name, child, friend, can get medical documentation. And then there's a second paragraph that talks about getting medical information. And I personally use that for my 93-year-old mother when I can't go on her doctor appointment. We have that in place, emailed to the doctor's office, and I can call them at the end of the day when my mom has an appointment, and the doctor can tell me over the phone what occurred. But the reason I bring up that form is it also names people to your discharge panel. So when the hospital has a discharge planning meeting, this document authorizes that your advocate to be in the room to talk with the doctors about discharge. Now, if you don't have it in writing, more times than not, the hospital and the doctors aren't going to allow you to be involved in those conversations. So this document basically opens the door to that. And on a few occasions, we've had the advocate sit there and say, I don't think my mom should be released just yet, just because yesterday she had a great day and she's turning the corner. Let's just see what the next couple days bring. So, Jonathan, what else do you see?
And I can tell you, when we admit a client under home health care, one of the first things we have to do is find out, do they have advanced directives? Is there a power of attorney? And we need a copy. We need a copy of that document, because I've had times where people have requested documentation regarding the care of someone, but if they are not the listed power of attorney, I cannot send it to them.
That's right.
But there are family members like, well, it's my mom or it's my dad. We want this information. I'm like, I have to follow what the law says, and the law says this person
They're
is
their own person.
Correct. So it does come up. I mean, every client, everybody that we admit under our service, we have to find out. And this is a CMS guideline, right? So it's not a PARC policy, but it's actually
Medicare guideline.
Right. It's a Medicare and Medicaid guideline that everybody that does admit under our service, we need to know, do they have advanced directives? Is there a power of attorney in place? And we need to obtain copies of that information.
If the hospital finds that out, is that something that they will send you in the discharge
Not often.
paperwork, or do you have to? Obviously, you check your.
Yes, not often. And my assumption for that would be probably because that's in their admission paperwork, and what I get is their discharge paperwork. I'm sure the hospital needs that for CMS guidelines too.
Yeah.
So it might go into a different form of medical records that doesn't get released at discharge. But
Interesting.
We have to follow our own rules, and so we make sure we obtain that information ourselves.
And I always like to say with, this is kind of jumping, but we're going to end up back where we just started, is I like to tell clients, if you don't do an estate plan with me or another attorney, that's okay, because the state of Michigan has an estate plan for you, and it's called the probate code. So we don't want that.
You don't want that plan.
And the same with the hospitals. If you don't have a designation of patient advocate or an advance directive, the hospitals have a one-page blank form that you print the name of the person that you want, and you sign the bottom with your name and date. But there's only it's a one page. I think our advance directive is like 12 pages long, and the HIPAA release is 2 pages long. So needless to say, there's a lot more meat and girth in a patient advocate or designation of patient advocate through an attorney's office, not mine, but other attorneys that do estate planning. So if you get admitted into a hospital and you don't have one in place, you can do a Band-Aid and they'll sign one right there, but it doesn't have any meat on it at all.
That's what I was going to ask you too. So if they did one at the hospital, is that something that patient or that client can just take with them and say, well, this is what the hospital gave me, I can use it wherever I want?
No. And literally it's on the hospital's letterhead. It's on the hospital
ground only.
No, it's on their letterhead as well. Mm-hmm. But yeah.
I wanted to ask you, because we get a lot of clients that want to utilize some Medicaid services a lot, because our program, Home Health, is a Medicare service. What's covered under Medicare is different than what's covered under Medicaid. Mm-hmm. And some people they don't qualify for it. Needless to say, whether they deserve it or not, that's another thing, but they don't qualify based on, the law of Medicare and Medicaid. So oftentimes there's this urgency. There's this urgency to do spend downs on their assets. And I never have a correct answer for how long it takes. And oftentimes it might be too long for what they need. They need something
They need
sooner.
care sooner.
They need it sooner.
And that's a problem. That's the real problem is sometimes families realize too late that they need to do the spend down. And that becomes an issue because there's the 5-year look back. There's still the 5-year look back. Mm-hmm. But there's certain things like, I think, and I could be wrong, and someone out there is going to definitely call me out on it, but I think it was 2 or 3 years ago that the government allowed the house not to be used as an asset for the Medicaid spend down.
Okay.
So especially if you have a joint person on your deed, because the house is half that person's. So, but that's still the look back. But I always say, if you have an elderly person, you do the estate planning now, you do the Medicaid planning now, so you build a time period, and maybe you get to the 5 years, maybe you don't, but you're taking the necessary steps. Now, yesterday, I ended up drafting a special needs trust for a gentleman who is on Medicare and Medicaid. And he got, and this is the silliest little thing, he got $50,000 inheritance from his father. Well, and this happened to me in Monroe about 5 years ago. A gentleman got $50,000. He got a $50,000 inheritance from his uncle. And he took it, deposited, and he got disqualified because his assets were over the limit.
And inheritance counts?
Yes.
Interesting.
And so what we did was they called disclaim the inheritance. So he would make more money staying on Medicaid and Medicare than he would with the $50,000. That's a no-brainer, but he lost that gift. So what we've done is we create a special needs trust for those individuals. And so what we have is if there's an inheritance, they put the inheritance in the special needs trust. Now the individual, let's say it's me that I'm on Medicaid and Medicare, and I'm getting government assistance, and I get a $50,000 inheritance. So what I do is I tell the attorneys or who's ever handling the probate estate and say, I'm on Medicaid. I can't receive the money, but my child here is willing to be the trustee of the special needs trust, cut a check to my special needs trust bank account. That person is 100% in control. I can make no decisions. I cannot make withdrawals. All I am is the beneficiary, the funds coming from that special needs trust to me, and that is still qualified so they don't lose their qualification under Medicaid. So that's how we do it, because the trust, as you guys know, a trust is a legal entity. And so it's not a person, and all my assets that go into my trust correctly, those assets are no longer mine. They belong to the trust, but I'm in control of the trust. With a special needs trust, I can't be in control. That's how we get around that.
How would you ever know that unless you talk to someone like him?
Yeah, I wouldn't know what to say to my clients.
You're like, how do I repeat that?
Yeah, I can. I think we just give them your number.
586-915-2184.
I think we just give them that.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, it's crazy that you have to do those kinds of things, but it's necessary.
And $50,000.
He probably actually really needs to have that money.
And he does. And, let's be honest, $50,000 today isn't going to change anybody's life.
No, milk's
and
$5
especially if someone is already on government assistance, they need more assistance.
Right.
And it's just it's an issue, and there should be some legislation. I'm not here to push legislation, but
I know what you really want to say.
No, it's really tough. It's really tough for us because we take these phone calls, and oftentimes family members have this sense of urgency, and there's they're frantic about the situation, and we don't always have the answers, and nor should we, because we're not experts on the subject.
Right.
We are experts on what we carry out. What we carry out, I can talk for hours about what we offer, but there are things that we have to transform ourselves into, agents of other topics, because oftentimes that's what they need.
Have you guys created a checklist? So let's pretend I have an elderly mother. I call you up, and we set an appointment. You come over to my mom's house or apartment or condo, wherever she lives. You sit down. I'm there. My mom's there. What's the first 10 minutes like with you guys?
So first 10 minutes is we're going through the admission consents. So we have to come in, we have to go through a booklet of all the service that we are going to provide, all the phone numbers where they can reach us, a lot of the emergency contacts, especially for like their county, for the state, there's elder abuse, there's CMS's phone number. We have to go over all the different resources that they have now that we're inside of their home. And once we're going through their admission consent, we go over this type of services that are going to be provided, if it's skilled nursing, physical therapy, occupational therapy, etc. Once we start going through that, we need consent from the client. And that's where we kind of gravitate into what would be something where your field helps a lot with, because who's the consent coming from? There's either a section where the authorized signature is from the client, or the authorized signature is someone who is their power of attorney. Mm-hmm. So you ask for a copy of that document you're doing at that moment in time. Yes. Mm-hmm. Yes, we do that, and then we upload it to the patient's charts. So our consents or our admissions usually are kind of like the dynamics of the home, the dynamics of the client, and then it becomes more tailored to the physical and mental, emotional status of the clients, like a head to toe assessment. How do I, so I make the call to you, we schedule the appointment for tomorrow. What do I need to do to prepare for that initial meeting with you? What do I need to gather up? Yeah, so actually it's, the clients wanting the services is a great start. I mean, if they call because they want the service, I think we're already ahead. But we need a physician to agree with that. A physician needs to determine that the needs are necessary. So referrals have to come either from hospital settings, physician settings, skilled nursing facilities, etc. So to make an appointment, we need a referral.
So if I call you and say, my mom's slipping, we'd like you to come. I heard great things about you. Kori's told us this and that. And then you'll say, have you consulted a doctor? Have they issued a letter?
Have you seen your physician in the last 90 days? Have you had a status change from your baseline? What's the need for it now? Have you been hospitalized? And if you check any of those boxes, we would need documentation from the physician to come see you.
And they'll help you to get it. Like,
oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, anybody can call and just say, hey, I'm interested in home health. And if they call you, they'll say, great. All right. Who is your physician? And we'll get that information for you.
But how do you get the information from the physician?
Yeah. They'll fax it over. They'll fax over a referral.
Do you provide a authorization?
We have referral forms. Some offices use their own referral forms. It's all about what the physician's office use. Some of them say fax over a blank one. Some of them use their own. Some of them prefer not to. They have it in other formats. But if there's a way that we can have them fill out the referral checklist, then it's a completed referral. Now under Medicare guidelines, we're able to see a client.
Okay, so I feel like I'm like interviewing you.
I'm happy. Love it. It's great.
I'm used to Kori.
You can black her out. Right?
I'm used to Kori asking these questions.
Well, it falls in line. So let me ask you this.
This is what we want. We want people to learn from each other.
Yeah, let him take over.
What's the biggest, I'm going to call it a mistake that the potential client, does when I contact you? So what's the biggest, I'm going to call it delay?
Okay. This is a good question. The biggest delay is that you have not gone to see your physician.
Yeah.
Okay.
That is such a big delay because people, if you have a hard time getting out of your home, if you need home care, chances are it's good chance that it's difficult for you to leave your house. And sometimes you haven't seen your physician. And I would say sometimes even in our industry, we do not do a great job of educating our physicians on the process because you'll have some physicians that will write the referral for a client, but the progress note states that they saw the client 7 months ago. Well, that doesn't follow CMS guidelines. That's right. You have to have been seen within the last 90 days or the next 30 days. That ends up being a really, really big delay. And I think one of the delays that we would deal with a referral is probably the same delay that all of us are dealing with our own personal businesses is staffing shortages. So a physician's office want to send the fax, but they have a laundry list of other things that they're also dealing with, and their phones are ringing off the hook with other companies calling for other home cares, pharmacies, hospices, anything, anybody who has something they can do with a physician, those phone lines are ringing with them trying to get a hold of them too. So sometimes paperwork doesn't make it to us on time. And I think we empathize because I think all of us are going through staffing shortages.
Sometimes I found previously when I did home health care that they would send over the referral because they thought that the client needed it, which they did, but then they had some very strange diagnosis code that CMS didn't approve either because they've changed what they've allowed. Before you could have a code that said just falls a lot, so essentially falls frequently. And now they're like, no, falls a lot is not a diagnosis. Like, why are they falling?
So they gather data every 10 years. Every 10 years they gather data and they want to just change. And I don't want to say change just for the sake of changing, but they're looking for abuse of the system. Right. And so unsteady gait or muscle weakness, which are valid reasons for a senior to need care, but they notice trends of diagnosis codes being used more than others. So like we see a history of falls or unsteady gait being commonly used. Now they want to tailor to what caused that. So in CMS's mind is that something caused the unsteady gait, something caused the history of falls, and now they have certain diagnosis codes that are billable and certain ones that are not. So that's kind of a barrier that I would say in 2019 and 2020, it was really challenging because that was the first years. Now I think we're now 3 years later. We figured it out because you've called the physician so many times saying, this doesn't work. this doesn't work. And you got to be careful because it's about maintaining relationships.
That's right.
You don't want to frustrate a doctor. So that's why, we create our own referral forms, and sometimes we can kind of pull out what the physician is trying to say and help them and say, doctor, are you suggesting that the patient has lumbar or
stenosis or
lumbar
something.
stenosis or cervicalgia or those are the codes that Medicare say you can use. We need you to document it that way. There's definitely hurdles.
Yes.
Believe me, it's perfect when just a phone call could get you the service. I just think that was ages ago.
Yeah.
I think that used to be how easy it is, but now, there's a lot of boxes that need to be checked.
Well, and I like that you asked those questions because when you told us, how does my special needs person get this money and maintain Medicaid benefits? We have no idea with the healthcare rates.
Yeah.
So that is why I wanted to bring you both on, because then there's so much to learn, so many different, I don't want to say they're tricks. They're not tricks.
No.
You're following the law,
right.
but you don't know those ways to make things easier for your clients.
Even just hearing you talk about the spend down, I only know so little bit about it, but I knew that it existed. And so if I can give my clients any resource, I feel like I'm doing them justice by providing them resources.
Mm-hmm.
But even learning now just, the 5-year look back and how long it takes for the spend down. And, I was going to ask now my crosstalk opportunity is what are some other resources? Because that's what clients want. They want resources, and we provide them with booklets. They don't get read very often.
No, and you have all the phone numbers. You're like, here, you can call Area on Aging, or, because that is like a government funded thing. But I mean, you can't always call for them. We don't have time to do all of it.
Some of the best form of customer service is being able to relay the information.
I don't know, but I know someone who does.
Yes.
Right. And that's why we're here, because of the senior podcast. And a lot of times you bring more value to your clients when you don't provide a service and you refer them to somebody that you do work with. Mm-hmm. Now, our firm, I think we have a pretty wide breadth of third parties that we lean on. And just like anything else, we want to get feedback from our clients that we had a great experience with Jonathan's company, and so we like to put them at the top of the list. Just because we know that they're getting taken care of. And, quite frankly, I have nothing's better than getting a text or a phone call from somebody thanking me for referring them to Jonathan or someone else who answered their questions and who they hired. And it just brings it back that, I'm bringing a service to them. Mm-hmm. I want to backtrack for 1 second on the codes. Okay? Because codes are for those individuals that don't know the codes, that's how the billing gets done from when your doctor visit to your doctor.
To your insurance.
To your insurance company. So what happens is when they change those codes, do you, and I don't expect you to know, but do you see certain codes continually being rejected?
Well, so we are notified within our EMR system. So if we do put a code that is potentially going to get rejected, it notifies you. It notifies you that this is not a PDGM, patient-driven grouping model, which is what home care is now under the payment system of. When it's not a PDGM code, it will kick back. So we become familiar with what's not billable anymore. So rather than continuously putting it in, we start to recognize early on from referral paperwork, this isn't going to work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And because we're held to that standard, it's really difficult because you can go see your physician for unsteady gait.
Yeah.
And your physician can bill for that. So when the physician says in their note, go see home health care for unsteady gait, when we get that referral, it's actually not a usable referral. Mm-hmm. And that was a challenge in the transition. But I think one of the things we learned is that anybody in the healthcare field is subject to auditing by CMS. Mm-hmm. So I think we all really empathize with each other, because I was always nervous to make that call. Hey, doctor, your documentation needs to just be a little bit more clearer. Mm-hmm. And it's because CMS wants it this way. And I think what I was expecting was frustration because I'm adding work, but I think what I got was a lot of empathy from the understanding that CMS has rules for the physician, and they have rules for every specialist has their own rules.
Yes.
So we all know when
we're all in the same boat here.
We're all in the same boat. So it's like, hey, Medicare wants to look at this chart. They understand, hey, they have to do their own chart audits themselves. So I think that was really refreshing to know that we can call doctors and we can ask them.
Absolutely.
It's not telling them how to do their job. It's just helping
I want to see your client. I want to help, our mutual patient.
Yeah.
This is what we need to do that.
Plus, it saves work down the road, so they don't have to keep resubmitting, which is kind of what I was going to get to with the code question. The viewers and listeners out there, if you end up getting a bill, invoice from a physician or the hospital, and you can see on there whether it was rejected through the insurance company, is you go back to your physician and you ask them to resubmit. And my unofficial
in his experience.
Yeah, that too. I have seen that almost 3/4 of the claims that were denied were ultimately taken care of, because when the individual called the doctor's office and said it's being rejected, they go back just like you're saying, and they clean up the language, resubmit the invoice, and voila, your copay is certainly much less.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Call and ask questions. Ask questions all day long, because nothing will ever get fixed unless you try to call and do something about it, right? And a lot of the time, I think you're right. They will end up backing down or changing something in some way. To help.
The word advocate is really important in healthcare, and we can all be advocates, not only for ourselves, but for our clients, for our family members. So advocating for, a bill, an unnecessary bill, or advocating for a rejection. I can tell you, when we deal with appeals, we're advocating for our company that the service we provided was warranted. It was warranted. It includes hospital paperwork. It includes progress notes from our therapists or our nurses. They want to appeal these. Oftentimes, when we submit with our language of our expertise, oftentimes they are met with, they are withdrawing their appeal. They're withdrawing our appeal. So we have to advocate. It's a system that we truly don't understand completely. It can change at any moment, and you can't really pinpoint why something gets triggered or audited. It's from, it's obviously from something much larger than your company or my company.
Yeah.
But we advocate, and we want to learn. We try to look for trends and patterns of what are things they don't want to see? What are things that they consider in the language of their Bible? What is
literally?
Yeah. What is it that falls under the jurisdiction of what you're supposed to do?
I feel like you guys are both using a lot of the same language. Appeals, jurisdiction. Does it sound familiar?
Yep. So we have a couple more minutes. Let's switch over to one more topic. So end of life decisions for you. Talk about hospice. Now, to a lot of people, hospice is, their loved one is going to die in the next couple of days.
Yeah.
But over the last couple of years, I've been using the term long-term hospice because the death is not imminent. So how do you guys deal with that?
This is a perfect question.
Right, it really was. So for home healthcare, it's a service where we are hoping that there's a prognosis to get better. So in home healthcare, a lot of the service we provide is to improve our clients.
Yes.
And sometimes that's just not feasible. It's not realistic. And as we start to see the documentation starts to get stagnant, or there's starting to be a decline in our patient status, that's where we have to contact the families, because what home health is designed for, the client is not utilizing those, or the benefits of home health are not what the client is progressing towards. So the design of the program is to get better. We see that our client is progressively getting worse. now we cannot utilize home health benefits.
Right.
And that's an area where I feel like I'm very comfortable and I am an expert on. But as somebody transitions into hospice care, potentially into hospice care, we have to talk to families about why the transition, because some of them don't want to transition because hospice is still a very difficult term to be used.
So taboo subject with, like you said, they're dead tomorrow.
Right. And we experience that all the time. A lot of, speaking as an ethnic person myself, a lot of our ethnic population here in, the tri-counties of Detroit, that word really is a challenging word to bring up because it is met with
resistance.
Yeah, because they
denial.
They do believe
more denial.
They do believe that
scared.
Somebody is going to pass away tomorrow. The word was inadvertently used once upon a time in my company's life. That the word hospice was used as a suggestion, and the family started calling relatives to come see the client because
they were actively passing.
That's what they were assuming.
Yeah.
They were still under home health care service, but that's what the word meant to them. So we do have to have that conversation because we want to utilize benefits that that Medicare provides to clients, but we want to use them appropriately. So if somebody's not progressing in home health, it's hard to keep them on service. So you have to talk about the potential to transition into hospice. Now, I'm no expert on hospice yet, but PARC home care, we are in the phases of becoming PARC home health and hospice. So we do have a hospice agency. We are actually in the early stages of it, but we do have a hospice company. So I really want to answer that question in a few months where I become more of an expert on it.
I think ultimately, though, with bringing that up, having that conversation, there are definitely benefits that people can receive further out. So you could, even if you have a terminal illness and they're giving you 6 months, absolutely go on hospice because there are so many more benefits that you can receive that you are eligible for by having those certain diagnoses, so that you can obtain those benefits. Like if you need medical equipment, if you have congestive heart failure and you can't lay down flat anymore because you can't breathe, you feel like you're drowning, then hospice will pay for a hospital bed. So there are many benefits.
Michael, I will say, bringing up hospice is such an important topic because it's probably the most underutilized benefit that Medicare has to offer.
There's one word, it's called education.
Bingo.
We need to educate the public more that, again, when my initial statement, hospice doesn't mean necessarily that your loved one's going to die in the next couple of days. And like you just said, it's very important because of the benefits. And we got to get the family members past the word and realize that in my statement to my clients is we need to make that person as comfortable as possible. And if that means 3 months or 4 months, then, let's figure out how we can do that over a longer period of time.
Yeah, if they're having mobility issues and they are projected to have that length of time, they're so uncomfortable, they're going to stay in the same spot and have wounds, get on hospice so that they can provide you with the equipment that you need so that you don't get wounds, just as an example, right? Because that's going to save you some pain and suffering. Yes. It's going to take stress off of the family because you have a whole crew coming in supporting you.
So I believe that, the families, they hear it from me and they hear it from both of you. I think when it comes to education, it's the healthcare professionals.
Yes.
And the reason why I say that is there's oftentimes people are put onto home care and it's not appropriate. It's not appropriate to be on home care. It's not what the benefit is for.
Yes.
Their benefits that they're looking for are tailored more for hospice.
Right.
So you have to do things within the lines of what Medicare's benefits are for. But it's an uncomfortable conversation. And so it could be that physicians, practitioners, hospital systems have a difficult time telling people about hospice. So they tell people, why don't you try home health care?
Right.
But when we see, with the laws and the rules of what home care criteria is, we see somebody's not progressing. They truly do fit into that benefit of hospice. And
you can still get therapies on hospice. That doesn't mean that you're not eligible for those types of things to help with that education and still help with mobility, right?
So it
might not be too independent.
Yes, it's the
but
expectations.
It is to make it easier for you during that time, whatever length of time that is. And you can go on and off on and off hospice.
Absolutely. And they talk about maintenance with it when it comes to the therapy. When it comes to the therapy, it's, again, not that the disease process is going to slow down, but how much can we, how
do you make it easier?
How do we make it easier?
Like if you are going to stay at home, like how do you teach the family more so to make these home adaptations in the environment that they're in?
Right.
At any rate, so we can continue this all day long. We're going to have to do some more of these because I love this. I love learning your different questions for each other. That is amazing. But I do want to give you each a second to sort of talk about yourself. So Michael, how can our listeners get a hold of you? Where can they find you?
I am the owner of the Marsalese Law Group. My phone number is area code 586-915-2184, or my email address is mm@marsalese.com. Phone calls are free. Initial conferences for about 45 minutes are free. So if you have questions, just call and ask. And if I can't help you, I know somebody that will be able to.
I'll say, and I do want to mention too, like you do estate planning, but you do have some other services. You guys can find those on his website. Definitely pick his brain. He has lots of knowledge and has the patience to be able to provide that education should you need it. Like we've said in previous podcasts, like do not be afraid to call, because just because you don't know something, he's not going to think you're stupid for asking those questions, right? So we all can't be experts, and very, very kind and thoughtful, easy to talk to.
And one simple question, and I answer it, can open the door, for what you need to do next. And, like Jonathan was saying, if you make and I'll let him tell you, but you make a phone call to him and you're not ready, he's going to tell you, you need to get a doctor appointment. So we get a diagnosis, and then I'll transfer it to you that way.
Thank you. Jonathan Gasso. I'm the owner of PARC Home Care and Hospice. Woo! And I'm an occupational therapist by trade, and you guys can get a hold of me. Me personally at 248-915-8592. If you don't want someone who's going to talk as long as I would, call the office. Somebody else is going to be just as thoughtful when answering your questions. True. Our office is 248-328-2939. You can also go to our website, parkhomecare.com.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much for being here. I do think that this was a great conversation. I love the back and forth from you guys. Thank you so much for giving me a break, Michael. I appreciate that as well. If you have questions for me or you have topics that you would like to hear about, you can reach me at 586-204-8500 or kl@theseniormovers.com. You can find us on YouTube at The Senior Movers. You can find us on Instagram at Adviso, and you can find us on Facebook and Adviso and theseniormovers.com. Definitely leave some comments for us. Give us a call. We're more than happy to answer any of the questions that you have on any of the topics that you find on the Senior Podcast Show. And until next time, we'll see you later. Thanks again, guys.
Thank you.